You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today, broadcasting from... Fine, I'll admit I'm not in Jerusalem. I am in the United States. I came here in order to spend time with my mother, who is not well, and I'm doing this show anyway from here. And yes, I did get on that plane a few days after the Israeli election. I did indeed leave the country because spending time with my mother is so important. And yes, I'm proud of that, but it is a challenge because I knew when I got on that plane that there could be challenges in coming back. Maybe I didn't know quite how many challenges that there would be coming back, and maybe I still don't know how many challenges that there will be in coming back. But a good Jewish boy has to put his mother first sometimes. And so as I am here writing for the Jerusalem Post from here and observing the Purim holiday today here in America, we got news that does not really fit with Purim. Purim, you're supposed to get happy news. And instead, we got very sad news that made Purim feel a little bit less festive. And that is the news by the Israeli government that literally everyone who sets his foot in the country, in Israel, has to be quarantined for 14 days. Meaning however long my stay in America ends up being, and that's 14 more days away from my family. And that is extremely difficult because I have a wonderful family. I understand why Israel did it, but that does not make that decision any easier for me personally. When I return to Israel, I will not be allowed to have any physical contact with anyone in my family, apparently. I'm going to have to wear a lot of masks and gloves and stuff. I'm not going to be able to interact with them in any way if I follow the rules exactly as I'm supposed to do. My laundry is supposed to be done separately. I'm supposed to be in a separate room and ideally use different bathrooms than other people. It says in the rules that you can find there on the internet. And really be a part in every way just in case. Even though I feel perfectly healthy, even if I continue to show no symptoms in any way, those symptoms can develop later on, and the last thing I want to do is put anyone in my family in any danger whatsoever. And out of the 50 people who've gotten the coronavirus in Israel as this radio show is being taped, 49 of them, and we don't really know what happened with the 50th, have gotten the virus from going to a different country. And so I am here in a different country in America, and I understand that that makes me a threat to my family, as challenging as that sounds, and as odd as it feels even saying it. And I want to keep my family healthy and safe. So here I am. And even though I really don't like this decision personally, it really says something about Israel that I have to admire. Israel is a country that is taking more steps to prevent the virus from infecting people than any country on the face of this earth, undeniably. Israel is the first country to bar Americans from setting foot in the country without being quarantined. No other country has done that. America certainly is not doing that. And this is a very impressive precaution that they are taking. You got to hand it to them for that. You got to hand it to the health ministry for recommending that, and to the Israeli government for approving it. This decision was made by Netanyahu together with the health minister and the finance minister. The finance minister agreed to it knowing that this would cause great harm to the Israeli economy, which is losing billions with no end in sight. The Israeli economy depends in part on tourism. that tourism is no longer happening. Tourists are being shown the door, being told to leave, being told to isolate themselves. That is not what they came into the country to do, to isolate themselves. They came to the country to see the beauty of the land, and they're not getting to see the beauty of the land. I myself have had many lectures that I was supposed to give to tourists canceled. I was especially looking forward to the JLI visit of 700 representatives or activists, or not just regular people, from the educational arm of Chabad, who were coming from all across North America, being brought by the amazing emissaries, the shluchim of Chabad. There is no bigger trip to Israel that happens than this JLI experience that happens in March. And it's a big honor that I always address that group. And they're not coming. First they said, for sure, we're coming no matter what. And in the end, they're not coming either, because what could they do? They couldn't do anything. So this hurts the educational development of Americans who wanted to learn about Israel by coming on a JLI trip, which is a wonderful way of seeing Israel. And I encourage you to look into coming on a future JLI trip with your local Chabad emissary. But without these tourists, the Israeli economy gets hurt a ton. Not just speakers, but store owners and restaurants and everything. And it's going to be up to the people of Israel who are not in quarantine, there are apparently millions of them, to go on vacation, fill up these hotels as best as you can, fill up the restaurants. You have a responsibility that I cannot personally take part in right now. Go out and eat. It's an important Zionist cause. Go and relax. That's also an important Zionist cause. We in Israel are a light unto the nations. We are a leader. And being that light involves sometimes hitting things along the way to get to that light. It involves sometimes being blinded by the light. And that's what Israel is right now. But by leading the way in taking these extra precautions against the coronavirus, Israel is kind of a guinea pig, experimenting things that the other world might end up doing later. We do that in technological innovation. We're very proud of that. Unfortunately, we also do it when it comes to facing terror, car rammings, shootings, stabbings, rockets, mortars, terror tunnels underground, kites. All these things that they get tested in Israel, and then you never know when they're going to be then adopted in other places. That certainly happened with the car rammings, and with going into houses of worship and praying. Excuse me, not praying and shooting. It happened in Har Nof in Jerusalem, and then it happened in Poway and in Pittsburgh. So it's not easy being that light unto the nations. There's a lot of negative drawbacks that come with that, but we are destined to be that light. That is who we are in good times and bad, and these are very, very, very bad times. And that's why I want to pay tribute to the people who are currently working on a vaccine for the coronavirus. I know that there are doctors and scientists working on this around the world, and I wish best of luck to all of them around the world, but I want to wish extra best of luck to the doctors and scientists that are working on this in Israel today. It would be wonderful if they succeed first in getting that virus. Again, whoever gets it first, more power to them. Sooner the better. But if it happens in Israel first, that's great. I suggest that everyone Googles an article written by the wonderful and talented Maayan Hoffman, who wrote about the attempts to get a vaccine for Israel. There is already an Israeli-developed vaccine for the avian flu, the bird flu, and this vaccine is currently being modified to adapt to the different virus that COVID-19 is. So they are currently testing this adapted virus on the birds. And after they're done adapting it for the birds, and they'll be trying it on mammals. And after they try it on mammals, they will be trying it on people. And we in Israel have a quicker process when it comes to testing new drugs and vaccines, I guess, than they do in America, where the FDA has a very long process of getting things to be on the market. So that's another advantage we have in Israel, that we maybe aren't so careful with that. I don't know. Maybe they say even within 3 months that vaccine will be ready to be tested on humans. And if it works, then it can be helping people all around the world. And that would be amazing. Wouldn't it be wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, if the cure to the coronavirus comes from Jerusalem, comes from Zion, comes from the Jewish people in the Jewish democratic state that we are, that the intelligence that there is in Israel that came from the ingathering of the exiles can be used to create such a greater good that is needed all around the world to save lives. That would be so wonderful if we become that light even more than we've been all along. And then if that happens, well, I'm sure there will be people who hate Israel and will continue to hate Israel, who want to boycott Israel and will continue to boycott Israel. Those people, they'll get the virus. And then they won't have a vaccine, and they won't have a cure, and they will suffer for their hate. And darn. But the people around the world who are not haters, who are not BDSers, who are not boycotters, will continue to be able to enjoy what Israel gives to the world, making Israel a better place. And enjoying the fact that there is a state of Israel out there. And so while I am not currently there, my heart is very much there, and I'd like to conclude this portion of the show before we go to a break to dedicate this show to who my heart is with, and that is my wife, Maayan Hoffman, who is there in Israel holding down the fort, taking care of those kids, running the Jerusalem Post website, being the news editor of the Jerusalem Post, and writing the overwhelming majority of the coronavirus articles that there are on jpost.com, and she's really become an expert on the coronavirus. And yet, I still came here. I didn't listen to her. She told me not to come here, and the I told you so's are justified and genuine. And ladies and gentlemen, I think the lesson here is listen to your wife. With that important lesson, we'll take a break, and we'll be back after the break.
This is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation, wanting to wish everyone a joyous Purim holiday from the entire staff of the Land of Israel Network. All year long, we, like Esther and Mordechai, uncover the real stories behind the story and Hashem's actions behind the scenes. V'nahafachu. Happy Purim, everyone. From Eve Harrow at the Land of Israel Network.
And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on the landofisrael.com, where I'm broadcasting not from Jerusalem, but from America, where I'm visiting my mother, who is not well, unfortunately. And while I am here, I am working for the Jerusalem Post. I appreciate that they are letting me, in order to visit my mother, work from here, and I'm updating the website all day and writing for print just like I do when I am in Israel, and I am reporting on all the excitement happening in Israeli politics. If we have anything positive to say about the coronavirus, I can tell you that it has made journalists more mobile. We are banned from covering things, because we apparently spread the coronavirus. I didn't know that. I knew that elderly and sick people are more likely to get the coronavirus, but people around the world seem to think that journalists also are more likely to spread it, and that's why we've been banned from doing our jobs by the NBA, the National Hockey League. Major League Baseball made a decision yesterday. The president's residence in Israel says that journalists will only be allowed to cover the consultations there are to form a new government by Facebook, where the consultations will be broadcast, because if we go into the president's residence, we are liable to give people a disease. I don't get it. I don't understand why we are seen as more disease spreading than other human beings are. We're journalists. I don't think that's a sin, being a journalist, but it is what it is. So everything I would possibly be covering, I'm not allowed to come to anyway. So I might as well be in Chicago, because no difference. And so here I am in America, and telling people around the world what's going on in Israeli politics. So as we speak, there is a process going on of forming a government. It is not easy to form a government in Israel. We've had now 3 elections that have not resulted in a government. And so it's going on. There are currently 3 different options. Option number 1 is a minority government. There are currently 62 members of Knesset who do not want Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to remain Prime Minister of Israel. And so they can decide together to form a minority government. This, as I've explained on a previous show, would be made up of Blue and White, Labor, Gesher, Meretz, and Israel Beitenu, and would have to be supported in one way or another from outside the coalition by the joint list of Arab parties. How much they would be supported from outside remains to be seen. They would like to be a full partner in the government without being actually in the government because of collective responsibility. They would have to take collective responsibility for the government's decisions if they were in the government. That means attacking their cousins if they attack us from Gaza or from Syria. And that means building communities over the pre-67 border. That means house demolitions of homes built illegally. The Joint Arab List does not want to have that on their conscience, but they are willing to support a government from outside in return for such demands as not attacking Gaza, not moving Donald Trump's peace plan forward, and $64 billion, shekels, to build up the Arab sector's infrastructure. I don't think that Blue and White is willing to do all of those things, because what Yair Lapid, who's number 2 in Blue and White, wrote on Facebook today, and you can see it in English on the Blue and White Facebook, or in an article I wrote for jpost.com. He wrote all the Blue and White really needs from the joint list is to vote once in favor. You got to get 61 once, and then just not let the government fall. That there would continue to be a majority against Netanyahu remaining in power. Netanyahu's 58 members of Knesset in his bloc. There are 62 who oppose him. Lapid writes, they just have to vote with us once. That's all. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that is what he is saying. Netanyahu, of course, is saying that this is betrayal of the state because there are joint list MKs who have said things that are absolutely abhorrent about Israel being colonialist and defending terrorists and attacking the IDF and all kinds of nasty, nasty things. This is a tough sell, and this is something that has made Blue and White have a challenge because they promised throughout the election campaign that they would not sit in a government backed by the joint list in any way. And here they are trying to do it. And they also would prefer there to be option 2, which is a unity government. But how they could justify saying that Gantz has to lead that unity government after Likud won 3 more seats, and after the bloc of Likud won 58, and you can't really count the joint list in the bloc of blue and white, it's a little tough to understand, but that is what they're demanding in blue and white. They're demanding that if there would be a unity government, that Benny Gantz would form that government. He would go first, and the Likud's leader after Netanyahu would go second. And the reason why they're making that demand is that Netanyahu does have 3 criminal indictments hanging over his head, and his trial will begin next week. And they say it's illegitimate to serve under a prime minister who has been indicted. Their voters certainly made that statement that they don't want to serve under Netanyahu when they voted for blue and white. Then again, they also didn't want to serve together with the Joint Arab List. So blue and white has already broken one major campaign promise. The way to have a government in Israel is that they would break another. They could let Netanyahu serve for a number of months. He would form that government, and then they would take over with various guarantees to make sure that would happen and run the country for 2 years. That might be the only way they'd run their country, and that might be the only way to avoid a third election, because right now the minority government might not have the support that they're asking for. There are 2 members of Knesset in blue and white who are saying they won't support that government by any means, Yoaz Hendel and Yoaz Hendel and Tzvi Hauser. There's another member of Knesset named Chili Tropper who also opposes it and has not yet decided whether he would vote against it like the other 2. There's also Gabi Ashkenazi, who doesn't like the idea of a minority government. Their numbers are falling. The options for blue and white are dwindling. The minority government option might not really be there. And the unity government option might be the only way. They might, in the end, be compelled by the people of Israel to join a Netanyahu-led government. Because having an election again would be absolutely obscene, ladies and gentlemen. We have a coronavirus that's put a couple 100,000 Israelis right now in isolation, and I am soon to join them when I come back home. We've an economy that's losing billions and billions and billions. We're going to spend billions again on another election. That is not an option, ladies and gentlemen. That cannot happen. A 4th election, it's not there in the possibilities. Compromising is there. Blue and white giving in and sitting under Netanyahu, breaking everything that they stood for, that's there. That is a possibility. There's a poll that was taken by direct polls that found that 44% of blue and white voters prefer a unity government. That is a lot of blue and white voters who look at the 3 different options, say they're all bad, and that the election option is the worst. So we're waiting to see. Still, more of them would prefer the minority government option, apparently. And they'll try, but if it turns out that the numbers aren't there, that it doesn't exist, and if it turns out that a unity government is the only option, then we'll see if the leaders there put the people first, as they say that they do in all of their ads. Because the people of Israel will not tolerate another election. Of course, I've said that before, the 2nd election and the 3rd election. This is a time for unity in Israel when we're facing an unprecedented health crisis, when we're facing what might be an unprecedented economic crisis. The people of Israel have learned to come together in challenging times. They have come together in times of war, in times of economic disasters, times of people dying in various tragedies. There are many ways that have brought Israel together in sadness, and many ways that have brought Israel together in joy, from Nobel Prizes to Olympic medals.
this is a time when the people of Israel have to be coming together, and I hope that they will ultimately decide to come together. And if not, I'll be covering that fourth election for the Jerusalem Post. I will end with another possibility, which is that maybe we'll just all go into isolation. I shouldn't be among the minority. Put the majority of the people of Israel in isolation. You know what? Put all of us in isolation. If you want to prevent the spread of disease, have everybody in a different room. And maybe the only two people in the country who won't be put in quarantine would be Netanyahu and his wife Sarah. And an election will be initiated, and the two of them will go vote, and nobody else will be allowed to vote. And then we'd have a government. There would be 2 votes in favor. They'd get all the seats. I'm sure that's what they would like to see happen. But that is one way of getting a government. We'll add that to the list of possibilities. So this has been Gil Hoffman on Inside Israel Today. Even though I'm not inside Israel today, broadcasting from America. And let's see where I'll be next week. You never quite know. Thank you. And shalom and happy Purim.
You're listening to the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, broadcasting the truth and beauty of Israel to the